Hi, we're Wiser Systems. I'm Seth Holler, CEO, and we have...
Logan Maxwell, wearer of many hats.
And here today, we're going to talk about automotive. But what aspects are we going to talk about?
Well, there's automotive in a general sense, which is combined a lot with our traditional manufacturing use cases, whip, assemblies, sub-assemblies, but there are some special automotive use cases that we've seen and been installed with that are fun to point out.
So when you think of automotive manufacturing, you generally think of assembly lines, high volume, usually making all the same widget. And as we've talked about for Wiser or for ultra wideband, typically it's stuff getting lost. But when you're on an assembly line, the actual item you're making doesn't get lost very often.
Right, not as often. You certainly could still use us for that. I don't want to discourage you to pursue us. But traditionally, if it's on a rail, if it's on a line, that item is not going to be lost as much. Now, you might have a process where a portion is on a rail and it moves through, say, a paint or a bake or a coat or abrasion, but then it becomes off and it becomes moving and cycling whip again. That's very common in most of the manufacturing facilities we're in. But when you look at automotive is a pretty broad term, but you're looking at cars being made.
Right, we're talking about cars, high volume.
Yeah, those tend to be on a rail, on a line.
But ultra wideband, specifically Wiser's solution, does play a role within automotive. It's not so much tracking the item on the rail, but because it's high volume, you have to stage it and get all the equipment, materials, and tools at the right time and the right place to keep that assembly line moving. And those items move around.
Right. So very similar to other manufacturing sectors that we're in, the sub-assemblies, the kitted components, the materials that need to make it to the line are a really good use case for tracking technology like ours or others, where you can track everything that needs to be brought in and then put on or bolted on or welded on, that sort of thing. So automotive still has a lot of those use cases, but we've actually seen recently, as over the last year or so, some very automotive specific use cases that I think would be good to highlight. So one been recently involved with is actually on the interior of cars and the testing and moving through that process. So every part that goes on a car has to be tested. All of these things go through test labs. And so all of that is, when you think about it, individual work order or whip as it moves through each different station. This has to move to this station, has to move to this station, and we need to track how long has it been in each place, and we need to make sure we're not losing them. That's both the material and the fixtures that hold that material. So it's kind of a feeds into the flow way down at the bottom, but those testing facilities, this is a very good use case for our technology.
So testing, that's one aspect. What's the second one?
So second that I've dealt with is dealing with molds or fixtures. And people have different terms for it, but essentially it's 2 or 4 or even 6 different plates that are going to come together, and then you're going to make a part with it. Now, keeping track of these seems straightforward, but in a large facility, these get used and cycled many times. You need to keep track of how many times you cycle it because it needs to be kept in compliance, and then it needs to be worked on, go to maintenance, go to storage. And when you're running a new part, it can become difficult to go and find that particular mold or that particular jig or fixture. And so we have found, similar to almost the test lab situation, in production, the jigs and the fixtures can be an important thing to track.
Great point. And then I think we talked about one last one, right? It's on assembly line, when you're ready to do work on a part or a car, say riveting or drilling, you need to have that equipment there at the time. And so being able to track the individual drill or riveter or other tooling that might move around between stations becomes very important in a high throughput scenario.
Right. It's again, think about it as it's maybe not the finished good or quasi-finished good as it moves through the line, but everything at the line, the
tools,
the fixtures, and the parts and assemblies themselves.
And potentially, potentially the material that goes on the vehicle itself.
Exactly. So that there's more than that, but hopefully that if you're in this industry, you probably recognize some of these as pain points. So as always, reach out, contact us, call us, email us, do whatever you want to do. We're here to help answer your questions. Consider us a resource. No pressure, obviously. We're happy to come out, demo the system at your facility. Seeing is believing.
Thanks so much, everyone. We'll talk to you next time.